Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Soul Channel. Woohoo! We're back. I've been so engaged with the Global Evolutionary Summit and traveling that Soul Channel had to take a back seat. You have to have flow in your energy. But I knew about 2 weeks ago that it was time to bring it back. And one of the catalysts to bringing it back is my guest today. Sally and I met, and there was just this incredible connection and this deep reverence and respect and honor for who she is, what she's created, and how she's purposefully stepped into a passion that she not only embodies on the energetic planes, but has built this deep wisdom through an education system that was never built for what she created. So I'm thrilled to share our time with you. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Dr. Sally Shakti Willow is a star priestess of Avalon, visionary writing guide, and best-selling author with a PhD in utopian poetics. I told you, right? She has published 7 books and developed her signature ritual writing warm up practice while recovering from the intensity of a doctoral study. With over 20 years of yoga and meditation practice and extensive teaching experience, Sally has shared her transformational process with hundreds of writers, from academics to coaches, helping them overcome blocks and access their authentic voice. She was named one of LA Weekly's 15 book coaches to watch in 2023, and she's the founder of Writing and Thriving. This is where she supports soul centered visionaries to bring their stories into the world, combining ritual, ceremony, and writing. She believes, and I agree, words carry light code frequencies and that visionary writers are powerful co creators of reality and significant influence on the evolution of our planet. So, welcome, Sally.
Thank you so much, Teresa. I really enjoyed and appreciated that lovely kind of improv channeled introduction there, where you were speaking about the energy on my imprint on the energetic planes, and how this education system, this world wasn't created for essentially the work we both do. I think that's exciting and interesting thread that's come through.
Well, it's so incredible to me when somebody takes the traditional structures of society and melds and merges them into the deep spiritual aspects of the world and comes out with an even greater result. I mean, to me, that's brilliance.
Thank you. My PhD journey, I think, was always going to be guided by those parts of my soul that have always been overseeing my journey. Um, it was difficult to write what I wanted to write in an academic setting because it had such a um, spiritual and esoteric foundation. Um, I was writing, as you said, about what I called utopian poetics. And for me, that was a way that words and writing, language on the page, in the body, in the voice, can create that relationship of connection between self and other that isn't always present and possible in our material world. And that's what's utopian about it, is that gesture towards um, interconnection, interconnectivity.
Agreed. And It's the foundation of how we evolve. It's it's the essential key to allow us to be that piece of the puzzle that supports the earth and the planet and other people. And I love that you've merged those worlds. So, in your own words, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're up to.
Well, we're recording this in December 2025. Um and I'm now 5 years into my business journey. So I tend to work in these kind of 5 year cycles. I know my life kind of comes around in these sort of 5 year cycles. So I spent 5 years doing my PhD and my master's, and then I moved out of that world, and then I went to live in an intentional personal development community for a period of time. That's where I met my partner, who became my husband. We got a really solid foundation to our relationship from starting our relationship in that fire of intensity of both living and being on a full-time personal development program when we came together. um, we got married just about 1 year ago on the winter solstice at Glastonbury Goddess Temple. So I'm very blessed to live not right inside Glastonbury, Avalon, but just outside of Glastonbury in the UK. So where I live, there's a river. I live in a town called Bruton, and there's a river, the River Brue, that weaves literally all the way around the town. I've lived in two different houses in this town, and we've always had the river outside our home. It just weaves its way around. Um, and I just also feel to mention this beautiful, enormous cedar that's right there outside as well, and it's right by the river, and just in the energy field of our home. And so the river weaves its way around the streets of where I live, and it flows then through to Glastonbury, to Avalon, and it flows past the base of the Tor. So that's the river that runs through Avalon, and that's the river that runs then out into the I don't know the exact geography, into the Avon. I think I'm wrong there. I think that Avon's a different river, but it runs out into the sea eventually on the west coast. And when Avalon was an island, that water and that would have all been marshland and water and flooded. And so we now have that same river. And Brue is the goddess Bridget. It's another name for Bridie, Bridget. So we have that energy flowing through here where we are. I'm not really talking about me. I'm talking about the place, but I love it. And I want to say one more thing about it. It used to be part of a large forested area called the Forest of Selwood. I've been avoiding reading the history because there were witch trials in this town that took people from the Forest of Selwood, and the ancient ways and the ancient practitioners. And I just feel very strongly that they would have practiced here as much and as well as they would have practiced in Avalon. They would have practiced here. It was forested. It had a river running through it. There's a very deep well in the old chapel building that goes right down. And I want to tell you about a dream I had when I first arrived back here with this house that we now live in. I was standing in the dream. I was standing at the top of what's called Grove Alley. And I know it's called Grove Alley. I've walked down it many times, but in the dream, I looked at the sign and it said Grove Alley. And so I asked myself the question in the dream, if this is Grove Alley, where's the Grove? And I'd never asked myself that in the waking life, but I asked myself that in the dream. I was like, where's the Grove? And then I turned and looked, and exactly where I looked was where the church now is, on a slight rise beside the river. And so I thought, oh, there's the Grove. That's where they used to go and worship.
Wow. Your connection to this magical place is profound. I love that. And I love that as you're speaking, I can feel it. You embody it and you resonate it through your words, your descriptions, your energy. It's powerful. Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the invitation.
So how did you land there? Tell me, because you're a star priestess of Avalon. Tell me about that because I feel like there's a little bit of a connection there, is there?
Yeah, so Avalon is the mystical Isle of Avalon. It's has its King Arthur connections. It has connections with the Druids, the priestesses, um, and its real world, physical world counterpart is Glastonbury, which is in the southwest of England, and that's very close to where I live. Um, Glastonbury has this earth mound called the Tor, and that's shaped as a labyrinth. There's a lot of energetic connection in that place. There's lots of different sacred sites. There's springs. You've got the red spring, the white spring. The white spring comes right down off of the Tor. The red spring runs beside it. Um, the Tor is said to have had a stone circle on the top previously. It now has the tower of a church that had been built on top of it called St. Michael's Church. Why is it called St. Michael's? Because it runs across the St. Michael ley line.
Okay.
And the Michael and Mary lines cross there, as they also cross at Avebury, which is just slightly further north. In this
Okay,
area
so
where I, yeah,
let's define for everybody listening what a Tor is, Tor, because some
TOR.
people won't know
Mm.
what that is. Yeah.
Yeah, TOR. Um, I don't know the etymology. It's something I could look up. But essentially, it's a hill. It's a large hill.
Hmm.
Um, we have them all over the landscape, especially in the southwest, and we call them tors. So it doesn't mean tower. There's a tower on top of the tor, but it's not the tower. It's the tor.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Mm. So it feels like so you were talking about the Star Priests of Avalon and how tell us a little bit about that and then how you landed where you are. Was it yeah.
Yeah. Well, when you asked the question, I went right back. Um, and I feel like we can talk about this here to, those days that people perhaps call the golden age. I have a sense that it was celestially the age of Virgo, and so where we people now talking about the age of Aquarius.
Hmm.
We have a processional cycle where the spring equinox sun rises in a certain sign at a certain time. We're now entering into the age of Aquarius, out of the age of Pisces. They go backwards, so we had Pisces and then Aquarius. um they last about 2 to 2,500 years, I think, and the whole cycle is 26,000 years to go around the entire zodiac. um and so I kind of have a sense of a past life experience as a priestess of Avalon in Avalon. Um, I probably have had connections here in Bruton where I live as well, but this is specifically in Avalon. Um, and that would have been around the time of the age of Virgo. Um, so I think I once figured out that was about 14,000 years ago. Um, but that's a little bit hazy at the moment. I'm not quite sure if I got that right. Um, but my sense is that there were priests and priestesses there,
Yeah.
on the land at Avalon, and people have written about this. Marion Zimmer Bradley wrote the novel The Mists of Avalon, and it's a very sacred island, or site, landscape. It used to be marshland. This area is called Somerset. It means the land of the summer people. You couldn't really live here, because it was flooded and it was marshy. But the Tor, um, which was Avalon, would stand above the marshes. And that's where you get the mists of Avalon, because then the mists would conceal the Tor from the ordinary folk. Um, but I do feel a sense of connection to the place, from many different imprints. One of which goes back as far as the age of Virgo, um, and I've always been drawn to be here. Um, there's People say, like, if you live in Glastonbury itself, um, people say that you have, like a Glastonbury experience, because the there's so much work that happens. It's like a vortex there. And
Yeah.
the Glastonbury tour is also said to be the heart chakra of the world. So it's a really powerful vortex. Um, when you're there, you know, your life begins to change, because the goddess, who's very much alive in that landscape, there's a lot of people at the goddess temple who've done a lot of work to bring her back. And I don't necessarily align with everything in their um in their mode of belief, but I'm very much also affiliated with them through my Star Priestess training. That's where I did my Star Priestess training. And essentially, the Star Priestess training is a way of looking at astrology through a goddess centered lens and a goddess focused lens. And it's about working with astrological energies and astrological wisdom to also bring back some of those priestess um, skills and qualities. So we work with things like oracling and embodying the goddess, and healing, and various different divination, and working with the energies of the planets, and the energies of the constellations and the alignments, in a way that is somewhat different than other astrologers might.
Right. Right. Well, and I think so for me, as I'm listening to you share this and thinking back on our original question of, who are you and what are you doing in the world? And what I love is you've drawn a map, you've drawn a picture of how you are using this aspect of yourself in a parallel life, in another life, in another embodiment to bring forth wisdom to inform how you support people in their own evolution, which I think is stunning and so very relevant, and that it appears in the divine feminine, that star priestess, which is essential for the evolution today. I know that from my own experience, bringing the divine feminine more alive and more relevant in how the world evolves and how life plays out for us. And this isn't a man woman thing, it's an energy thing, right? Um, is so incredibly essential. So I'm watching in my mind's eye your unfolding and these beautiful puzzle pieces coming together and how you've orchestrated them. So let's draw a thread then to the PhD, because sister, that's out of left field, right? And A, getting a PhD, and B, what was the journey to get to that? And what's the application now? So those are, I guess, my And I think it's so important that um, it's that beautiful full moon tonight. And we're talking about evolution and the unfolding of life and how nothing's ever wasted. Everything's purposeful. Every experience, everything that you do contributes to the whole of who you are today and how that can influence where you're going next. So I'm just loving this conversation.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad because I feel like we're roving all over the place. Thank you for reining me back in. um, well, the PhD came before the Star Priestess training. It came out of various things. Like I've always written. I've always written. I've always written poetry. My grandmother, who is also quite a gifted intuitive, but she had suppressed a lot of her own wisdom for her own safety, um, always said that I would do something with my writing. And I didn't know what that was or what it would be. It's still evolving, still unfolding. Um, but I was an English teacher for 10 years. I taught English in schools, in secondary schools for 10 years. I kind of I had a sense that that was my duty, and it it really took a lot from me. I was chronically burnt out by the end of that period of my life, and I knew that I wanted to move towards my own writing, and I also wanted to move in a more spiritual direction with what I was doing and what I was creating and bringing into the world. But I also have always been academic. I mean, I worked in education for 10 years. I've always been academic, and I have excelled intellectually, but not always thrived in an academic environment.
Oh, that's well said. Yeah. So I want to stop and place a little reverence around that very powerful statement. You thrived intellectually, but not spiritually or emotionally because of the burnout.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that speaks so, it speaks to me. I mean, to my corporate career, to
Yeah,
all of those times where we fit in and did the doing as opposed to embrace the self-care when it was needed.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And I think so many of us have done that. Women, people of our generation, who were really brought up to believe that that's what we were supposed to do. I didn't have any other way to express myself or to question that. I didn't have any other role models or guidance. The expectation was that we would either get a job or continue in education. And so I did try both of those routes. I actually got out of education early, and started work before most of my peers, because I didn't want to stay on that conveyor belt, of just, get the next qualification and then the next. But I quickly also realized that that was not the right path for me, because I was very intelligent, and I needed intellectual stimulation. I needed to excel. I needed to push myself further. So after working, I then went back to initially further education to get my A levels, and then I went to university, did my first degree, worked in teaching for 10 years. And then at the end of that period, really knew that I needed to change something, and again, didn't quite know how or what, but I decided that I wanted to write. And something else I think that's quite common, is rather instead of just writing and learning how to write, I thought that I needed to go to university so that somebody could teach me how to write. So that's what I did. And I spent 5 years then. I did my master's, followed by the PhD, which when I left teaching to take my master's, I didn't know what the direction was going to be. I just knew that it was time to move in a new direction, and that was the direction I wanted to take. So I did my master's in creative and critical writing, and then, through synchronous events, met the right people who were offering a funded place on a PhD that I was able to then apply for and received, to then go on and study what I wanted to study, which was this thing that I came up with about utopian poetics. I can thrive in that environment intellectually, like you said. But I also learned that there's a lot of value in taking our own creative path, and ultimately what I learned through university, and I learned a lot of skills, and I've researched a lot, and I've really advanced my own practice. But we don't necessarily need someone to teach us how to do the thing. We have it, it's in us. But what we can benefit from in various different contexts is a community and guidance and way showers who can actually support us on our journey.
Yeah, agreed. And I love that, upon getting the master's, you said, okay, now what's next? And let me define it by what is within me. Um, and I'm highlighting that because I don't think we give ourselves permission to do that. And I think that's wholesale, men, women, in corporate, in education, entrepreneurs, that, there's this living by default. I'll do what I'm meant to be doing, opposed to what feels right for me. So I want to offer that there's somebody out there listening who needs to hear that. Trust your intuition and move forward into the thing that wants to be expressed from within. Yeah,
And we can only do that. That path will only reveal itself as the unknown. It will never reveal itself as something that we have all the answers to at the outset, because we're working with two different parts of ourselves at that point. The brain, the mind, the intellect knows what it's learned and what it's been taught, and what it's previously experienced that to keep us safe, whereas the intuition has an embodied knowingness that is so much more subtle and refined and mysterious, and it requires our trust.
yeah,
It requires that step across the threshold onto the path of not knowing.
I agree 100%. For me, the realm of intuition is the path of I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's where magic exists.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Can I tell you, because I've just thought, I've been reading this book, and I wanted to share some parts from it. Can I talk about
Yeah,
magic for a
please.
second?
Yes.
All right. So this summer, I was down in Dartmoor, which is the High Moors in Devon, and there are lots of tours. There's wild landscape, stone circles, like magical stone circles that are hidden and you can't even find them. Like, or sometimes they reveal themselves. I was up on the moors, and I saw this incredible stone circle. It looked like Lord of the Rings, and I was like, I want to go there. But there was no way to get to it. So, like, it's this whole other realm. Like,
Wow.
so I was around there this summer, and I met some people just sitting outside a cafe, and I started talking to them. And this guy told me, he introduced himself as an English magician. And I don't know what an English magician is or what they do. I was so curious about this introduction that I'm actually now researching it, and I've bought a book. I've bought the book by Philip Carr-Gomm. It's the English Magic book. My mum's getting me that for Christmas, so I haven't read it yet. But I also bought the English Magic Tarot This is the book for the tarot deck, because the person I met was Rex Van Ryn, the creator of the English Magic Tarot, and I just, happened to meet him.
Else.
Right.
Talk about magic. I love that.
And we just happened to have this conversation. So then I bought the tarot, and I'm very curious because I don't really know super much about English magic as they call it. And what I've tried to avoid is that area of high magic that was all around, like Elizabeth I and John Dee and the Golden Dawn. But English magic combines high magic and folk magic, and according to their definition, astrology is a form of high magic. Some, ritualized practices are a form of high magic. So I can't exclude that. It's part of who I am. But there's the folk magic, the cunning man, the cunning woman, the cunning folk, and many of those people I resonate with very deeply, and believe that many of them were persecuted as witches during that period, when high magic then went on to kind of thrive in the elite circles. That's a little bit of an aside. Anyway, in this, I'm reading the intro, and it's like a book in itself. And I want to read you a few quotes. I really wanted to share these with you. So how there are three creators of this deck: Rex Van Ryn, Steve Dooley, and Andy Letcher. I think I met Rex and Andy that day, like by chance.
Not
So
by
Rex
chance.
did the, yeah, right. Rex did the artwork and Andy did the coloring, and I think Steve wrote the book. So they've collaborated on this. And their definition of magic, I want to read you. It says there are many definitions of magic, but the one I find most helpful is, quote, the art of causing change to occur in accordance with will, unquote. So that's the art of causing change to occur in accordance with will.
I love that. There's so much depth to that statement, isn't there? There's so much to unpack.
I think there's depth and simplicity. It's like that's what it is. Planting a seed, a vegetable, can be a form of magic.
Yeah.
And then we're going to get into inevitably writing. My passion is a form of magic, because when we allow words, this is my perspective, when we allow words to move through our bodies into the world, we've become some kind of transistor or transformer to bring something down, from inspiration down from the spirit world into physicality, into materiality. We're acting as the magician. I resonate very much with the magician from the tarot, who works with the four elements and spirit to create new forms and possibilities. That's, I see that as the job, the work of the magician. And that for me also is the work of the writer, the visionary writer, the utopian poet. We're calling in those, opening up that channel to new possibilities, to what wants to come through, to what wants to be born into the material world through us. And when we put those words down on the page, we bring them into materiality, we bring them through our channel, through our form. There's an internal alchemy that happens, as that these words are sounds, frequencies, sacred geometries. They move through us. Mm-hmm. They change our internal frequency. They alter our resonance and change our internal frequency. And I often find that they bring more structure to our internal frequency. We become clearer in ourselves, more empowered, more connected to our own wisdom and courage and confidence through the act of writing, whether that's public or private. We can write in our journals and have, a very profound impact. We bring words through into the world. Words are sound, vibration, frequency. That's the base layer of creation for this material physical world. When we bring that through our own vessel and bring it into the world, we're touching into the threads of reality. Like the people used to talk about, especially on these lands, people used to, and in Northern Europe, the Norns, the Fates. Here we used to here and in the Germanic cultures, they were called the Weird Sisters, the weavers of fate, and talking about fate as being threads, that weave together as a tapestry, and that creates the material world. It creates our lives. When we write with that kind of intention and consciousness, we touch into those threads and we create new pathways, new possibilities, new tapestries, new weavings in the world.
I agree 100%. I don't think we understand how profoundly powerful we are. And for me, I've been drawn to books since I was very young. I mean, I could go through two, three books a week easily. I just feed me because it does open these magic portals of possibility. Um, and I love the imagery that I'm receiving of, the writer being the channel who receives the divine wisdom that wants to be born through them and then allows it to take form on a page. And then when you receive that page, this whole golden world of endless possibilities shows up. And then you're at choice. What does your will want to put its focus on? Where does it want to lead you? And are you curious enough and courageous enough to say yes? Right?
Yeah, I would love to pick up on two threads that came through for me there, and well, three, because the first one is I love that you brought that into the perspective of the reader. Like the reader in Utopian Poetics, and in my perspective, the reader is an equal participant with the writer. It's not, and that's one of the things that Utopian Poetics does and explores. We're not in a power over relationship. And that's one of the other threads I want to bring through, because you spoke about kind of channeling this divine revelation, which is, I think, partially true. But I really want to talk about ethics and responsibility, and that as vessels, any of us has our own filters. We're working with our own filters, our own blind spots, our own subjectivity, our own shadows. And that is the only way that any anything that we can create can come into this physical world. It might have its divine blueprint, but we once it comes through my body as an imprint, it's going to also be imprinted with me, my own limitations, my own flaws, and everything that has made me who I am. So I'm really also keen to advocate responsibility in that as well, in the sense of like, I do think it's possible to channel something, maybe universal wisdom through writing, but we're all going to color that and flavor that according to our vocabulary, our language, our understanding, our our perspective. It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on that as somebody who actively channels as well.
Yeah, not only actively channels, but actually channeled two books. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so you are preaching to the choir here, sister, because when I first channeled my book, there was so many filters within me that I hadn't yet processed. So that everything that came through in the first iteration of my book was my giving voice to the beliefs and experiences and thoughts and emotions that I had experienced in a way that was healing for me.
Yeah.
But had somebody read that very first iteration, it would have been triggering for them. right? If they had any affinity with any of my experiences, and I got a 9 in karma, so man, I've gone through it all. So it would have been in there. Um, they would have been triggered and it would have been irresponsible and harmful. So that brings for me this sense of responsibility requires personal responsibility to acknowledge, okay, that's a great first draft, and that's not what I'm writing. And it also requires exactly what you do, this co-creation process and this ability to bring somebody in who you trust and love and honor and respect, who can be your mirror to say, okay, is this teaching? Is this guidance? Or is this processing?
Yeah. Yeah,
Right?
you have it. Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much in that. And I find the work that I do with people and with their words an extremely deep alchemical practice. It's a even when I'm working on the book, there's a sense in which I'm working with the person and their energy and their path and what's coming up for them. And again, when I'm making adjustments in the book, I'm weaving those threads. There's a real responsibility in that for me, as somebody who's working with another person's book, because every adjustment that we make in the text is adjusting those threads and the weave and the pattern. And I want to just address what you mentioned. Like, it's so important that often, almost always, the first draft is your personal healing draft.
Yeah.
And then the book is almost something else. The first draft is for you. The book is for readers. And there's a real difference between what wants to come through you for your healing, your journey, your part of the alchemy, and then what needs to come through for readers. And it will be adjusted and adapted and worked through, wrought from your original raw material. You'll then create this new being, which is the book for the readers, and that's the one that's alive for the readers to read, with the responsibility and the sense of what their journey is, where they are on their journey when they pick it up, and where you want to help them to get to by the end of the book.
Yeah. Agree 100%. I absolutely love that. And I'll also draw the parallel with um, the responsibility that the writer has is to bring you along on your own journey
Yeah,
and to open doors and to evoke thoughts and evoke ideas and evoke emotions so that you create your own wisdom. And to me, that is 100% what anyone who is coaching, mentoring, leading, I don't care what the environment is, that is the essence of the responsibility is what is the experience you're going to leave your reader with, your friend with, your sister, your brother, what are they going to walk away? What essence?
absolutely.
I
It's
love
more
that.
like what you're describing is more like it's a holding space for someone else's transformation to occur, and they are the person on their own journey. They're the hero of their own story. There's so many interesting things we could talk about here. um when you read, if you read even like words on a page, um you do something called subvocalization, and so you make slight minor tongue movements as if you were actually saying the words, and your brain hears the words in your own voice. So you are the protagonist of that story. And so the more, even if, and I coach writers to write transformational nonfiction, so we're not talking about novels, but I am talking about the hero of the story and the protagonist of the story, and that's the reader. in the first draft it can be you, and it's great. But by the time another person has that book in their hands, it has to be them. It's your story, but it's their transformation. And that's, you asked me at the beginning, how does the PhD weave into what I coach now? And really, like I said, that's the essence of utopian poetics, is that instead of that traditional author relationship of authority and power over, the the writer, the author is the one who holds the space for the reader's transformation and guides and supports them on their journey through the threshold and through the underworld that they have probably been through, because it's your stories as the writer, your underworld journey, that can guide and support your reader then to become the hero of their own story as they take that journey with you.
Yeah. I love what you're sharing here. And it lands so deeply because of my love of books. For me, it also so strongly aligns with the evolutionary phase the planet's in.
Yeah.
And and here's what came in for me was something I've done for probably subconsciously for 25 years, but consciously, like deeply conscious for the last 15, is if I pick up a book and I don't feel good with holding that book in my hands,
Mm.
I don't read it.
Yeah.
I don't care who the author is, how well known, what a guru they are. If it's not for me, it's not for me.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
and what you're describing, and again, this implicit permission to create your own world and create your own narrative is um is essential. I love
Mm.
that.
I mean, yeah, so much of, like you said, this evolutionary work that we're doing is about rewriting our own stories, and again, we can look at that on multiple levels. If we were coming from a therapeutic level, we'd be talking about the self-talk and the narratives that, the internal narratives and the inherited narratives and the inherited beliefs. And all of that shapes our lives, our behaviors, and then I also believe our cellular makeup and our frequency. The words we carry within us and around us in our energy fields shape the structure of our, of the sacred geometry that we're living. And you said about books, books are a physical manifestation of a collection of words, thoughts, ideas, and frequencies. If they don't feel good on your shelf or, in your hand or in your home, if you can, I would recommend not having them there, and I do certain things like, I don't sleep with books under my bed. I mean, these things like I used to do when I was young, just have like a pile of books under the bed. I don't sleep with books under the bed anymore because I can't sleep, right? All that mental energy
Yeah.
is there. I have I have a few well-chosen books next to my bed that I typically will read before sleep. Um, any books that are in my house have to be a frequency match, otherwise they don't come in, they don't stay. When we are surrounded by books, we're surrounded by frequencies that we either can choose to allow into our field or not, and we hopefully have that choice.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that because we are the creator of our worlds, and what we invite in is what manifests.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so thinking about, sacred geometry, I part of my study I was looking at, I'm really curious about structure. And I would say before the PhD and before I started to really investigate poetry, I didn't understand structure. I didn't understand story structure. I didn't get the relevance of structure. Studying poetry even contemporary experimental poetry, not like traditional metric poetry, but it really helped me to understand structure. Poems, the kind of poems that I write, so they're not metric, they're not traditional, they're not kind of rhythmic and rhyming, like Shakespeare or like a sonnet. They're experimental and contemporary, but that's why I had to work to learn and understand what structure means in that context. If it doesn't have, if it doesn't have a metric rhythm and a set rhyme scheme, how does it work? What's its internal logic? And I started to understand, or from my own perspective, that words have a certain internal logic to the way they behave as sounds and as frequencies. Consonants create shape and structure to a word, whereas vowels create sound. And so we have this interplay between shape or structure and sound, and that's how we make words, and our mouths, our whole vocal apparatus actually enables us to create certain sounds and words. And some cultures create different sounds and words than other cultures do.
Yeah.
I also read recently that our vocal apparatus settles into form at about the age of 14. And so
Wow.
our accent and the words that we can say and pronounce and the sounds that we make when we speak, that's fixed by the age of 14. And we can tweak it slightly, as we grow older, but it's pretty much in place by the age of 14.
Wow. I had no idea. That is a profound way of looking at it. And when we look at manifestation and will, when we vocalize something, we're giving it form
Yeah.
in such a powerful way.
We're
So
giving
the
it
fact
really
that,
embodied form.
yeah, yep. And the fact that as we read, we're forming the words in our mouth just adds an even deeper layer that I was not aware of. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. It's so powerful, isn't it? We're moving our mouths as if we're speaking aloud when we read. So again, it's like, choose what you read, be conscious about what you're reading. And I could remind myself of that as well. I've been looking at the news too much.
Yeah.
But we sub-vocalize, we move our vocal apparatus, we hear the words in our own voice in our head. So we're completely the protagonist in that exchange, in that experience. And I like to call that active or intentional participation, because like you said earlier, so often we don't realize how powerful we are, as co-creators of this world, and how much responsibility we have, because the frequency that we embody is the manifestation that we bring into the world.
Yeah. And more we know
Yeah.
that is becoming vital to what we want to create on the planet. And we're seeing all these rumblings as things start to break down, no longer align with what the majority of people are beginning to vibrate at and state that they want in their lives. So, yeah, the vitality of what we vibrate at is so key to changing our world.
Yeah, absolutely. And so much of that is also related to the stories that we have inherited, and that we can be participating in the letting go as well. And that's painful, and there's grief and there's healing and trauma. And part of, the way I would practice and teach that aspect is through journaling, again, through getting the words down and out, putting them out onto the page, um, getting them out of my body and putting them down onto the page. It's so powerful
Yeah.
for releasing work.
One of the most powerful exercises I've ever done is when, and this was probably 28 years ago, somebody said to me, Write your story. Who are you?
Yeah.
Write your story. And then they had us read it back to ourselves over and over
Wow.
and over again. By about the fourth time, I didn't like my story. And at that moment, I gave myself permission to change it. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I really, really love that. And so much of this work is about rewriting our story, at
100%.
every level, at every level. And we do have the power to change that.
Yeah,
It starts with what we believe about ourselves, and or what we sometimes don't even see in ourselves. And that's where writing and putting it down on the page, and as you said, reading it aloud even, can be such a mirror, because we get to see it. And I think the most powerful invitation in that is to become our own witness with compassion. We It's not about judgment, it's not about blame or shame. It's about the objectivity of having that story that's actually now outside of you because it's on the page. We can look at it a little bit more objectively, and use it as a mirror to be completely compassionate, completely accepting, because that's where the alchemy happens. That's where the transformation is. If you're resisting the story that's living within you, you actually can't let it go because you're still very much clinging onto it. But when we can put it down, literally put it down, and let those words release, and it takes time, but we do it with compassion and complete allowing for what is present and what's arising. That's what actually gives our story the space to transform.
I agree. 100%. And it allows us to move into a place of neutrality where we in turn can become curious because you can't be curious and judgmental at the same time.
Mm. And then that's when we become the space holder for our own internal alchemy, because there's space between me and my story, and I can hold space for that story without being identified with it or entwined with it.
Yeah. And calling in all the narratives that supported its creation. I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah.
So, can I put you on the spot? Would you read something that you've written
Oh,
for us?
I thought you might ask, because you've asked me
Oh,
that
good.
before. So yes, I well, do you know what I want to do? I want to say a prayer. And I wrote it myself. But I don't need to read it because I have it here. And I'll just tell you a little bit about it, because we've been talking about the land, and we've been talking about frequency, and language. So one of the very powerful and beautiful women who lives on this land, on Dartmoor, is Carolyn Hillier. And Carolyn has reconstructed an ancient roundhouse. She's done a lot of ceremonies. She makes drums. She used to make drums, music, poetry, books. And one of the profound things that she did, as well as creating the Weaver's Oracle, was she brought back into ceremony, again from academia, from academic institutions, the Bronze Age Proto-Celtic language of this land, which is the oldest language that we can probably go back to. It's about 4,000 years old. It's it's a proto-Celtic, means that we can't have physical evidence of this language actually existing.
Mhm.
But when we take all the interconnected Celtic languages that we are aware of, and we look at the words that are common, the common threads within all the different Celtic languages, that then leads back to a common root language that we can reconstruct from those common threads. So that's how the Proto Celtic language has been reconstructed, and it's a 4,000-year-old language that traveled across Europe and would have also been spoken on this land where I am here. So Carolyn brought that language back from academia and took it into ceremony in her roundhouse and worked with the ancient ancestors of the land that she was connected with in ceremony, and brought that language back into a living form. And she's created a Bronze Age Proto-Celtic English dictionary so that we can use those words to create prayers and songs and poetry and spells and all the things that we want to create. And she says it's like threading beads on a necklace, because their words, it's a very poetic way of speaking. There's not all the filler words that we have, like a sentence that has to be connected from this word to this word to this word. They're like jewels. There's a word, and there's a word, and there's a word, and then the way we put them together creates space for a lot of poetry to emerge through that language as a living language. It also has sounds associated with it, but it's very fluid and flexible because it traveled all the way across Europe. People would have spoken it differently in different places, so it's very permissive that we can allow it to fit our own vocal apparatus and not be worried that we're saying it wrong. And I really like that as well. So this kind of brings a lot of the threads back together, because in the book that Carolyn created from this ceremonial language practice, which is called Her Bone Bundle, and it's the Proto-Celtic English Dictionary. So I opened this up, and when I was doing my Star Priestess training, and I had that very profound connection with Avalon, and I noticed that the first word in this dictionary is aballo. It's Aballo, aballo, and it means apple orchard. Now that's what Avalon means. Avalon is the Isle of Apples. Wow. And it's the ancient land of apples. So aballo means apple or orchard. And for me, that connection was, well, that's Avalon. That's where Avalon comes from. Yeah. So I started to create a prayer, which is a prayer to the motherline. It's a prayer to the ancestors, the motherline, the female shamans of this land, who are called Sweetla. So we have our own word for shamanic practitioners, and for male practitioners it was Sweetlo, and for female practitioners it was Sweetla. Carolyn would pronounce that slightly differently, but that's my pronunciation. And then the second half of the prayer is a prayer to the Lady of Avalon, her 9 ravens, and so those are her sacred mystical birds, and they're also called the 9 Morgans. And the final part of the prayer is an invocation to hear our prayer, and the last line translates as the last 2 lines translate as hear our prayer, and then hear our poem spoken as prayer. So there's an actual word for poem spoken as prayer.
Oh, that feels amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for sharing that.
So I'm gonna tell you the prayer, and I'm gonna say it 3 times because it's quite short, and it will be good to kind of hear it and catch it. And I really feel that this language that Carolyn has brought back to us holds the mythic resonance of this land. I'll close my eyes.
Yeah, me too.
And I invite you to do that too. Noibo nani. Noibo matirsha. Noibo switla. Noibo fanonabalo. Nawan kajo weiko. Klinuan molieyo. Klinuan dona. Noibo nani. Noibo matirsha. Noibo switla. Noibo fanonabalo. Nawan kajo weiko. Klinuan molieyo. Klinuan dona. Noibo nani. Noibo matirsha. Noibo switla. Noibo fanonabalo. Nawan kajo weiko. Klinuan molieyo. Klinuan dona.
That was profoundly impactful and powerful. Thank you for sharing that, Sally. That was really just incredible. There are, my experience, rare times where the energy is so big and so important that I feel like my face is melting. I feel like my face is melting right now. It's just this energetic resonance that it's beautiful.
There's such a transmission in that language.
Yes. This has been extraordinary. We, just so everybody who's listening knows, we had no plans. We just showed up. And the result is, if you choose, I think life changing. I think the concepts and the wisdom that you've shared have such a tremendous influence. And I want to thank you for being courageous and brave enough to step into who you are today. And I'm so grateful we met and I get to join you on the journey as it unfolds.
Teresa, thank you so much. It's such a gift to be connected with you as well. Just the energy and the frequency that shines and radiates through from you in everything you do, and your absolute generosity of soul and spirit. I'm so grateful.
Thank you. Okay, before I start crying for real, thank you to everyone who is watching. Listen, listen, listen. Your soul is whispering to you. It has wisdom to share. And if you're lucky enough, it'll come in the form of a book. And that book can change your life if you have the courage to open the cover.
Oh, I love that. Thank
Thank
you.
you.